Pleased to say I'm joined by a very special guest indeed. My second guest on Track Talk Under Lights for 2020 is a man who's no stranger to racing here at Kranji, but most definitely a permanent fixture for this year going forward. 4 winners last year in 2019 for this man, Pat Moloney, who has very kindly joined me in the studio. Pat, great to see you, great to have your company, and you're very welcome to Track Talk Under Lights. How are you?
Yeah, very good. Thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure to be back in Singapore and looking forward to getting stuck into it.
Absolutely, and I certainly get the impression, Pat, that the modus operandi going forward is one that you really want to embrace racing here at Kranji. And well, you're no stranger, because obviously there was success last year. As we have a look at your profile, you can update us on this if needs be, but it's a pretty extensive CV at an early stage of your life.
Yeah, obviously. I probably started out, I was a bit of a late bloomer in terms of the actual racing. I finished school first, and instead of knocking off early, and then I took up my apprenticeship at age 18, and things were really good in my apprentice years, besides from when I had one brief little fall where I was out for a while, but had a really good apprenticeship supported by a lot of good strong trainers back in Australia, and as you say, was fortunate enough to obviously get a little opportunity over here in back in August, and I really enjoyed the racing, the style of racing, the people, the trainers, and the response I got when I was over here. So it was a pretty easy decision for myself to come back here and join the jockey ranks.
Just going back to what you said, I imagine your parents were probably pleased you finished school. That's probably something that not a lot of jockeys do nowadays. Yeah,
exactly right. Well, my mum is a teacher, okay. So and my dad always thought I was going to be a little bit too big, which is quite funny because now I'm sort of a natural lightweight jockey. So first things first was education, and once I was finished my education, I was still small enough and light enough, so there was full steam ahead from there, and things couldn't have worked out better. You know, I had a good base underneath me heading into my apprenticeship, and good support from my dad, who was my master, and obviously my mother, who was really good supportive person back at home.
And how much of an influence, or I imagine it was quite a big influence, that your father was your master when you were an apprentice. I imagine that probably counted for quite a bit of the fact that you had obviously a close bond already. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, I'm fourth generation. On my dad's side, his brother's a trainer also. They both train out at Caulfield. My grandfather, he was trainer, moved down from Warrnambool to Epsom. His father, so my great-grandfather, was also a trainer who used to train jumpers, steeplechasers and hurdlers out at Warrnambool. That's where it all started. So I'm fourth generation. Most people would have thought maybe I'd take up the training ranks, but Mum must have put bricks on my head and stopped me from growing and stopped feeding me as a kid. So I was ended up a little runt of the litter, and here I am.
And any desire to ever get off the ground? You mentioned obviously the steeplechasing and your pedigree. Has Pat Moloney ever got off the ground? Does he tackle an obstacle at all?
Yeah, well, it's funny enough, when I was a kid growing up, obviously I was around horses 24/7. So I was in the equestrian ring, did a fair bit of show riding, dressage, one-day eventing. So yeah, Mum was actually an eventer herself. So that's where her horse background came from, and I did quite a bit of eventing, so I learned to jump horses and stuff like that. But as in delving into the jockey ranks over the sticks, I don't think so. I think I'd prefer the flat, going fast, a little less dangerous than the steeplechasing, and there's plenty more options and probably a bit more money in the flat racing and the steeples. Yeah,
I'd agree with that fully, for sure. I think the flat racing most definitely the safer option. You were here last year, 48 rides in total, 4 winners. We're going to have a look back on some of these winners now, Pat, and some of them look pretty smart. We'll start with Diamond Ring. This was a pretty good performance when he broke his maiden.
Yeah, obviously it was my first winner over here. Thanks to Donald Logan and for a really strong, astute stable in the Falcon Racing. It was a good opportunity for me. He was still a big green and raw bugger when he won that day. And since then I've been able to sit on him again when I came over for the Singapore Gold Cup, and he improved, just got beaten that day. But yeah, he's he's a horse that I think this season could potentially come back a bigger and stronger horse.
Yeah, here's a horse that you went on for League Freedom. This wasn't the first of your winners for League. We'll get to that one in due course. But this is Ocean Crossing, and I guess you would have followed his form a bit as well. He's certainly gone on with the job now as well.
Yeah, exactly. He's won a few more since I won on him that night. But he was a lovely horse. He's probably a horse who probably prefers a little bit of sting out of the ground. But that was a perfectly placed race for him. Lee is quite an astute trainer. Obviously, I've known him since I was an apprentice back in Australia and rode for him winners over there. So, I was fortunate enough to team up with him that night again too.
And how much in your youth, seeing a horse like Maccabi Diva win 3 Melbourne Cups, did you think, I want to ride for that man? And he jumped on a good one here, Mr. Malik.
Yeah, exactly right. That's Maccabi Diva is probably the best horse I've seen. If I could have Black Caviar Maccabi Diva, I'd have Maccabi Diva because she's just an absolute beast, and winning the Melbourne Cup is my dream. But yeah, then fortunate enough to team back up with him and get on Mr. Malik, who's a horse that I've been keeping quite a close eye on. He hasn't hit the track since I won on him, so hopefully they don't take off a winning jockey. I would love to get back on him.
I'm sure he would. He was very good in his trial recently as well, Mr. Malik. Talking of Melbourne Cup, you've ridden in the Melbourne Cup, haven't you?
Yeah, I had my first ride in the Melbourne Cup in 2018. It was unbelievable experience. The whole build-up, everything. It's just like nothing else. It's I'm not sure what like the top races are like in other countries except for the Singapore Gold Cup, but the build-up, the parade and everything, it was unbelievable. People asking me for my autograph, which is just unheard of for a jockey really, unless you're, the Craig Williams, Damien Olivers or the Glenn Bosses of the world. But beautiful experience. Couldn't have asked for a better run in transit. Just when it needed the go button, he sort of didn't go fast enough for me up the straight. But yeah, he's been a fantastic horse for me. Von Jamasque, Geelong Cup, Queen Elizabeth. So it's been fantastic. And
you've been busy at the trials. A few shots here of you at the trials this week. Obviously teaming up with a lot of different trainers, and you got to sit on What's New as well, which must have been a good feel. Yeah,
absolutely. Good to hit the ground sort of running. Was quite busy this morning. Obviously had a few trials. I was fortunate enough to ride What's New, who's a handy enough horse of Cliff Brown's, who's won a Group 2 previously and ran really well in the Derby. I'll be partnering her first up in the Fortune Bowl, so it was good to get a feel of her this morning. She's a beautiful filly, sweet-natured, feels like she's a real trier, and everything this morning felt really nice and fluent in her action, so hopefully fresh up she can be really sharp and competitive.
Yeah, she's a quality mare, certainly one of the very best we've got here in Singapore. Just going back to what you said a few moments ago, obviously, regarding international racing, Singapore isn't the only stamp in your passport. You were telling me you rode at Chantilly in France a few years ago.
Yeah, so obviously I had a really successful apprenticeship back in Australia, and I was fortunate enough to get invited to the Longines International Apprentice Race, where a number of different apprentices from different countries competed, America, Germany, France, Ireland, England.
Do you remember any of the guys and girls that you rode against?
Yes, a couple. Owen Welsh from Ireland.
Oh, yes,
I've got a couple on Facebook and that, actually. In that.
How'd you do?
But it was a fantastic experience. Money couldn't buy that, it was unbelievable. Things didn't go to plan on the racetrack, but the experience nonetheless, and riding track work out in the forest and the whole race day experience really brought me on and opened my eyes up to the international racing. And since then, when I was stable rider for Mike Moloney back home in Australia, did a couple of skips across the across the ocean to New Zealand, and rode quite successfully over there for him. I rode a few group winners there for him and that on short stints, and it was another sort of thing that gave me a little bit of a sniff for the international racing.
Yeah, talking of group winners, the 2015 Alistair Clark Stakes was obviously your first. I imagine the goal here, Pat, is to obviously win at the very highest level. Do you set yourself goals at all personally? Anything you wish to achieve?
Yeah, absolutely. I keep them sort of pretty in-house, my goals, and just drive myself to achieve them. Obviously, that was a massive experience for me as an apprentice riding a Group 2 winner, and I think I was still claiming 2 kilos or 3 kilos then, and I've probably never ridden a better race since, to be honest. It was just the bee's knees, that ride. But yeah, it's you do set yourself goals. You think it's stupid if you don't.
Sure.
I've come over here obviously to ride as many winners as possible. I'm still chasing that elusive Group 1 winner. Yet to achieve that, ridden multiple other group races and group winners, but the Group 1 still eludes me. I've had a fair few rides in them now, so I've got the experience in them, but haven't got the score on the board yet, so to speak. But got plenty of goals, and I'm hoping that can tick a few of them off while I'm here.
Absolutely. Well, you may potentially be on a group performer on Friday night. Let's have a look at Pat's rides, because he's quite a busy man this weekend. And the horse I allude to, Pat Moloney, is race 6, Paxanimi for Cliff Brown. Nice to pick up a nice ride there for Cliff. He's got a lighter weight, and Michael obviously unable to do that weight, but you can.
Yeah, absolutely. I watched his tapes and watched his trials and that, and he looks pretty smart on his race performance. He looked to sort of be struggling to travel early, but once Michael got into him, he really picked the bridle up and savaged the line. His trial looked nice. He looked to bounce into the bridle. Looked like he improved from last preparation. He bounced into the bridle and travelled really nicely. And I think he's a ride that I'm really looking forward to this weekend.
And your rides for Saturday here, Pat. Busy book of rides. A couple that stand out there. Loyalty Man 1 and nice maiden for Stephen Gray, Silcado. Have you had much chance to sit in any of those?
Yeah, actually, funny enough, I've had a fair bit to do with both of them. Silcado, I rode here on the Gold Cup meeting.
Oh yes, of course.
And it was a really nice educational run. He learned a lot. I rode him track work the other morning, just punched him around slow my first morning back. Got a feel of him, come back bigger and stronger. Hopefully he can go on with it. And Loyalty Man, I actually... back home, he was trained by Mike Moloney, so I rode him all for Mike Moloney. He's a bit of a menace in the barriers, but I won a couple of I won over on the Flemington Carnival on him. I also won a Country Cups on him back home. So I also got a seat on him on Wednesday morning too, to have a feel of how the old boy was going. So hopefully we can reignite the flame when we team up internationally together. But yeah, it's good to get a good solid book of rides. 11 over the weekend for my first weekend back it's quite exciting.
Yeah, it's superb for sure. So Pat's going to be busy. Regrettably, we've run out of time here on Track Talk Under Lights, but Pat, many thanks for your company as always, and we wish you very well this weekend and for 2020. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks very much for having me, Nick.
Pat Moloney then, who joins the riding ranks here at the Singapore Turf Club.